Richard had been trying to protect her, not just from his own criminal entanglement, but from the truth about her family. The syndicate had ties to her father's demise, and they wouldn't hesitate to use her to get what they wanted. Amelia was trapped in a web of deceit and danger that spanned generations. She couldn't trust anyone, not even her own family. The truth finally came to a light in a dramatic confrontation. Edward Collins revealed that he had been involved with the Sërpëñt syndicate and that Richard had tried to escape their influence by creating the Daniel Wilson identity. But Edward had pulled him back, threatening to destroy everyone Richard loved if he didn't comply. Amelia was devastated by the betrayal. The man she had once called family had been manipulating her all along. She was nothing more than a pawn in a deadly game, and now she had no choice but to fight. But just as she thought things couldn't get worse, Richard reappeared. Amelia stood frozen as Richard walked into the room, battered and thin, but very much alive. He had been on the run for months, haunted by the Sërpëñt syndicate, but something had driven him to return. "You shouldn't have come back," Amelia said, her voice shaking. "I didn't have a choice," Richard replied. His eyes were filled with regret. "I had to protect you, Amelia." Before Amelia could respond, Mark stepped forward. "Protect her from what? You left her in the middle of a storm without any explanation. You lied to her, to all of us," Richard sighed, sitting down. "I was trying to break free from them, but they wouldn't let me go. They used you, Amelia, to get to me. And now, it is worse than ever." Amelia couldn't believe what she was hearing. Richard explained that the Sërpëñt syndicate had bigger plans, one that involved not only him but her as well. He revealed that the syndicate had plans to use her family's history with them to gain more power, and he had no idea how deep the conspiracy ran. Richard and Mark began working together to piece together the clues about the Sërpëñt syndicate's grand plan. The syndicate had ties to corrupt politicians, international cooperation, and even high-ranking law enforcement. They were involved in arms deals, black market technology, and extortion on a global scale. But what scared Amelia the most was the realization that they wanted something from her. The family has a connection to them that runs deeper than we imagined. Mark said, "Your father was one of their top associates. They could see you as an asset or a threat." Amelia felt her entire world had been turned upside down. Her father had died when she was young, and her mother never told her much about him. But now she needed answers. Amelia tracked down an old friend of her father's, a man named Otto Reynolds, who had once worked closely with him. Otto revealed the dark side of her father's life, that he had been deeply involved with the syndicate before his demise. He didn't have accident, as she had believed, but had been silenced by the syndicate when he tried to leave. "He wanted out," Otto said, his voice heavy with guilt. "He wanted to protect you and your mother, but they wouldn't let him go. And now they are coming for you." Amelia's mind reeled. Her entire life had been a lie. The syndicate had destroyed her family, and now they wanted to use her to continue their legacy. Amelia, Richard, and Mark realized that they couldn't trust anyone. The syndicate had people everywhere. Friends, family, even authorities could be on their payroll. Every step they took was dangerous, and one wrong move could cost them their lives. As Amelia was determined to fight back, She wasn't going to let the syndicate control her life the way they had controlled her father's. She was ready to uncover the truth, no matter what it took. Mark devised a plan to infiltrate the syndicate, using their knowledge of Richard's past dealings and the information they had gathered from Arthur Reynolds. But it required Amelia to play a dangerous role. She would have to pose as someone willing to join the syndicate and get close enough to its leaders to uncover their plans. Amelia, with Richard and Mark's help, began her risky infiltration into the Sërpëñt Syndicate's operations. She had to act like someone willing to carry on her father's legacy, a role she hated but knew was necessary. The syndicate was cautious at first, but eventually they accepted her into their circle, offering her a glimpse of their inner workings. She attended secret meetings, forged connections, and slowly gained their trust. But the deeper Amelia got, the more dangerous things became. She was playing a high-stake games, and one wrong move could expose her and get her in trouble. As Amelia continued to gather information, she discovered just how intricate and far-reaching the syndicate's operations were. They had connections with international criminals, arms dealers, and corrupt officials in several countries. Every day she walked a tightrope, trying to maintain her cover while getting closer to the syndicate's leaders. But things became even more complicated when she realized that one of the syndicate's top members was someone she had once trusted, Edward Collins, Richard's father. Edward was deeply involved in the syndicate's dealings, and he had been using his influence and wealth to protect them. The realization hit Amelia hard. She had been betrayed by the very people she had once considered family. Amelia confronted Richard in a tense and emotional confrontation. "How could you do this? You've destroyed Richard's life, and now you are here trying to redeem mine." Edward, calm and collected, admitted everything. "This world is ruthless, Amelia. You either control it or it controls you. Your father learned that too late. I'm going to give you a chance to embrace the power, to become part of something bigger." Amelia felt sickened by his words. She realized that Edward was beyond redemption, but she still needed more information before she could bring him down. The web of deceit around her grew tighter every day. As Amelia navigated the syndicate's dangerous waters, she began to notice changes in Richard. He had grown distant, consumed by guilt and fear. The man she had once loved seemed to be slipping away, and she didn't know how to reach him. Richard's behavior grew increasingly erratic, and Mark suspected that he was keeping something from them. Amelia didn't want to believe it, but the crack in their relationship were widening. She was torn between her loyalty to him and her need to protect herself. Richard's desperation reached a breaking point when he confessed that he had made a deal with the syndicate. In exchange for Amelia's safety, he agreed to return to their fold, to continue working for them as Daniel Weston. Amelia felt a surge of betrayal. "You promised you would protect me, Richard. You told me we would fight this together." "I didn't have a choice," Richard said, his voice raw with emotion. "They would have harmed you if I didn't comply. I did what I did." But Amelia wasn't sure if she could forgive him. Richard has once again made decisions that put her at risk, and now she was unsure if they will ever be together again. With tensions running high, Amelia and Mark discovered the syndicate's ultimate plan, a massive arms deal that would give them unprecedented power. If the deal went through, they would have control over weapons that could destabilize entire nations. Amelia knew she had to act fast. She couldn't let the syndicate complete the deal, but she needed more time to gather evidence and bring them down. And with Richard's betrayal fresh in her mind, she wasn't sure if she could trust him to help. With the clock ticking, Amelia formed a risky alliance with another member of the syndicate, someone who had grown disillusioned with the organization's brutality. Together, they devised a plan to sabotage the arms deal from the inside. But every step was dangerous. The syndicate was watching their every move, and one slip could expose them both. As the arms deal drew closer, Amelia, Mark, and their new ally raced against time to stop it. They infiltrated the syndicate's headquarters, gathering crucial evidence and planting sabotage devices that would disrupt the transaction. But the syndicate was always one step ahead. Amelia soon realized that someone within their group had betrayed them, tipping off the syndicate to their plans. The betrayal came from an unexpected source. Richard, consumed by his fear for Amelia's safety, had once again made a deal with the syndicate, offering up Mark and their ally in exchange for sparing Amelia's life. Amelia was devastated. Richard's love for her had turned into an obsession, and now he had crossed a line that she couldn't forgive. The final showdown took place in a remote warehouse, where the syndicate's leaders had gathered to finalize the arms deal. Amelia, Mark, and their ally launched a desperate assault, determined to stop the transaction and bring the syndicate down once and for all. The fight was fierce. Amelia faced off against Edward Collins, while Mark and their ally battled syndicate's enforcers. In the chaos, Richard appeared, torn between his loyalty to Amelia and his fear of the syndicate. In a climactic moment, Edward revealed the final truth about Amelia's father. He had not only been involved with the syndicate, but had been one of its founding members. The revelation shattered Amelia, but it also steeled her resolve. "I am not my father," she said, staring down Edwards, "and I won't let you win." Richard, torn between his loyalty to Amelia and his fear of the syndicate, tried to intervene, but in the chaos, a stray bullet hit him. He collapsed to the floor. Edward, realizing he had lost, escaped. In the end, the authorities, alerted by the allies' efforts, stormed the warehouse and arrested the remaining syndicate members. Amelia rushed to Richard's side, cradling him in her arms. "Why did you do it?" she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I thought I was protecting you," Richard gasped, his voice weak. "I wanted to fix my mistakes, but I only made it worse. I am sorry, Amelia." Amelia's heart broke. Despite everything, she had loved him once. She kissed his forehead as the medics arrived, taking him away. But she knew their relationship would never be the same again. In the days that followed the raid, aftermath of the syndicate's downfall felt across the city. Several key figures were arrested, their operations dismantled, and many of the syndicate's assets were seized by the authorities. However, the shadows of the Sërpëñt syndicate still loomed large. Edward Collins had escaped during the chaos, and the syndicate, though wounded, was far from dead. Amelia struggled with the weight of everything she had learned. Her father had been part of the very organization she had spent her life unknowingly fighting against. The legacy of her family was tainted, and it left her questioning her identity. Mark tried to help her process it all. You're not defined by your father's choices, Amelia. You made your own path, and that's what matters. But Amelia couldn't shake away the feeling that the fight was far from over. Edward Collins was still out there, and as long as he was there, she wouldn't be safe. Amelia found herself at a crossroads. The love she had once felt for Richard had turned into something unrecognizable. A mixture of betrayal, sadness, and regret. Richard was recovering in a hospital, but Amelia hadn't visited him. Their relationship, once built on trust, was irreparably damaged. Meanwhile, Mark continued to stand by her, helping her through the difficult days. Their bond had grown stronger through the ordeal, but Amelia wasn't sure what the future held for them. She needed time to heal, to figure out who she was now that the truth about her father and Richard had been exposed. Amelia decided to meet with Arthur Reynolds one last time. She needed closure about her father. He made mistakes, Amelia, Arthur said softly. But he did love you. He tried to protect you in the end. That's why he turned on the syndicate. Hearing this helped Amelia find some peace. Her father had been a flawed man, but in his final moments, he had tried to do the right thing. She wasn't doomed to follow in his footsteps. She had the power to choose her own identity. With the syndicate's leadership dismantled and many of its key players behind bars, Amelia knew it was time to move forward. But as much as she wanted to close that chapter of her life, she wouldn't shake the feeling that Edward will return. His final words echoed in her mind. I'll be back for you. Amelia made the decision to leave her old life behind and start afresh. She sold the house she had once shared with Richard and moved to a new city, far from the memories that haunted her. Mark, ever supportive, respected her needs for space, though he hinted at a future where they might reconnect. Before leaving, Amelia visited Richard one last time in the hospital. His eyes were filled with regret when he saw her, but he didn't try to stop her from walking away. I wish things could have been different, he said quietly. So did I, Amelia replied. But we can't change the past. As she left the hospital, Amelia felt a strange sense of relief. The weight of her father's legacy, the lies, the betrayal had lifted, and though the scars would remain, she was ready to move forward. Amelia had been abandoned to suffer, but she had survived. Now she was reclaiming her life, one step at a time. The future was uncertain, and the threat of Edward's return still loomed. But Amelia had found her strength. She was no longer the woman who had been left at the altar, shattered by betrayal. She was stronger now, and whatever challenges laid ahead, she will face them head on.